Hello and welcome to the second part of this MySQL performance tuning webinar series. So this webinar will be purely around real-time monitoring and RDS file-based log monitoring, which was pre-scheduled as the second part of this three-part series webinar. So my name is Sri Nair. I'm the product manager here at WebInc, and as you might know, this webinar will be presented in joint collaboration with Eric Vanier. So I would be going through the first part of this webinar, and then I would hand over controls to Eric, who would later show a couple of things which are pretty interesting. You would be fairly used to Monyok by now, and here's just a quick snapshot. Like it's an agentless, cost-effective monitoring tool. Many customers use it because we are able to deliver a superior quality product at a cost-effective standpoint, and the ROI is quite immediate. And let's go towards the structure of this particular webinar. We would be showcasing the architecture of Monyok, mainly because this webinar series is purely hands-on experience with Monyok, so you should know how the tool works. And then we would tell you what is the performance overhead caused by Monyok, if at all, and what should be the hardware configuration for running Monyok for different categories of deployment. Like, we will segregate into two categories based on the deployment size. At the same time, we'll show you the steps to monitor the RDS instances at a basic level so that you can get started and bring your experience using AWS console and all those things to make sense of the metrics that you would see in Monyok. Very excited to show you the RDS or OS monitoring, which is pretty new to Monyok. And Eric would later take over the control to showcase how can you analyze queries using or without the slow query file, and how can you analyze your queries in real time so you can make sure if an event has been occurring at a particular point in time, drill down to the cause of it, and become better at proactively monitoring your databases. Coming to the architecture of Monyok, it is an agentless monitoring tool which connects to the MySQL server using the MySQL C API and monitors it using a fixed set of queries. The MySQL logs and OS metrics for a Linux machine are fetched using an SSH connection from the /proc/stat file. So all the data fetched by Monyok is saved in an embedded SQLite repository. So it's an on-premise solution, stores the data wherever it is installed. We do not replicate or make a copy of the queries or your database, which you do not want. Also, the RDS MySQL logs and RDS OS metrics are accessed by Monyok using the REST API and CloudWatch API respectively. So in the case of a critical situation or a warning situation where it could probably become a critical one, Monyok would raise an SNMP or SMTP alert, which is received by a mail client or SNMP traps receiver respectively. So pretty basic architecture, very powerful, helps you to stay compliant. Don't have to go through quite a setup to do monitoring, which you have to already learn and spend a lot of time. Save money, use on some other project, make more money. Now coming to the performance overhead caused by Monyok. So you might be wondering, does Monyok put any additional load on MySQL servers? Because that's the last thing that you would like to have. I've seen many customers where they have deployed a big monitoring solution where their monitoring just becomes a nocturnal activity because there is so much overhead that the tool is causing in the daytime, which is a very bad situation after investing thousands of dollars. Some specific MySQL settings that Monyok leverages might put additional load on servers, but that is completely independent of Monyok. If those settings are present, MySQL may get impacted even if there was no Monyok deployed. Such impact is minuscule, in any case. So it's not Monio that is putting any load. So there would be cases where the load would be higher based on your operation style. For example, making use of the general query log or table-based slow query log analysis instead of file-based. To figure out the queries that are running for less than a second, you might use for performance schema. So you might do a performance schema-based query digest that might increase the load, but that is not from the tool. That's what you're fetching from the server. So Monio by itself, it does not put any additional load on servers, and the answer is very simple. The MySQL commands that Monio generally uses for collecting MySQL metrics, for example, show process list, show variables, or show status, don't have any overhead at all. So their result sets are always served directly from memory structures. The disk is never touched. No locking, no overhead at all. Also, we have made the necessary changes to the tool to make sure the CPU and or load average while monitoring large number of servers should not spike. For instance, the data collected by Monio is purged if it is older than the data retention time frame in this particular tool. So the default value is 7 days, but you can customize if you want to see historical data for a longer time frame. So if you are a deployment at the size of 100 plus servers or so, we purge the data of 4 servers at a time, and that dramatically reduces the load on the machine running Monio. So you don't have to worry about CPU spiking when you are doing a lot of analysis using Monio. Interestingly, this is something that a lot of prospects would like to understand before deploying a tool, the hardware requirement. So it is something that you would like to allocate before you go in and deploy a MySQL monitoring tool, because it's an on-premise solution. You would have to understand how big the data can grow in the internal SQLite repository, so you have got enough hardware to cope up with the needs, or to not have to worry about hardware ramp up during a growth spurt. For small and medium-sized deployment, the CPU and memory consumption depends on certain Monio configurations, like the data collection interval, a sniffing time interval, the number of currently open real-time sessions, because you could have multiple real-time sessions going on at the same time, data retention time frame, etc. So a low data collection interval may result in high CPU usage. Also, it depends on how busy is the MySQL server which is being monitored. So a dedicated system with double core CPU with 4 GB of memory is enough to handle Monio monitoring up to 15 to 20 servers, or maybe up to 50 servers. We have seen that it doesn't grow beyond that. Also, a 5 GB of storage space per server registered with Monio is preferable if you are using the features like real time and Sniffer on a moderate busy MySQL server. But the exact storage space consumed by Monio on your system would be a little bit hard to predict, because everybody would have a different way of collecting data. However, what you can do is leave your Sniffer running for 1 to 2 days and check the size of the data file generated for that particular period. So from that data size, you can approximately guess the size of the data which might get generated in the next 30 days. So you can quickly figure that out. And for larger size deployments, a Monio installation which would be monitoring around 500 to 600 servers will be very hardware dependent and would require a high-end dedicated system to handle such a load. So in that case, what we have seen, our customers, and they have a 16-core CPU with 32 GB of memory available, so that handles all the load. And for a Monio over 100 servers, we have seen that a 16-core Intel Xeon processor with 1.5 TB of available storage is running without any glitch. So that's how far you can pretty much go with the deployment size and the hardware configuration. Now, quickly moving on to the RDS monitoring part. So Moniog is the only tool that does file-based log monitoring. If you would be using CloudWatch, that's great. It does great system metrics for RDS, but you will not be able to see the queries. For example, top 10 queries. How would you figure that out? How would you know which queries are locking, which are actually resulting in a lot of system spike? How would you get alerts for such queries and stuff? So RDS file-based is pretty unique and powerful, because once the file-based log monitoring is enabled, it's as good as monitoring queries from a standard MySQL server running on-premise. So you can bridge the gap between hosted on the cloud and standard MySQL on-premise. So the steps that you should follow for this are mentioned on this slide, but you would clearly like to understand why file-based log monitoring is particularly important. So MySQL provides the error and query logs to enable you to help in diagnosing issue faced by the server and also analyze the queries that are executed. And the monitoring of those logs is very, very important, as warning and errors logged could be critical for the functionality of your server. For example, if a non-authorized person is trying to access the MySQL, the IP or the username, they are logged in the error log, which is essential to know during a phishing attack, and you should not be missing on that. So here are the basic steps that are rolled out here. Once you go to Moniog, you would see that you have to go to Edit Server, Advanced, and go to MySQL error log and enable the credentials, and which will particularly look like this. So there's a lot of graphics here, which is a small in small size and small font. So if you are on a medium-sized window, I would suggest that you expand it, or do not worry, we will send you the slides anyway, so you can follow the steps easily. So you would see that Edit Server is as good as adding a new server when you see the settings. Once you go to Edit Server, you see the Configuration tab. Under the Configuration tab, you should be going to the not exactly on the configuration, but all the way right. You should go to the Advanced Settings. That's where you will see the MySQL error log and the MySQL query log as well. I've showcased here how to enable the MySQL error log for RDS or Aurora using API. So once you are on MySQL error log, just enable that button to have an error log monitoring, and you would select RDS or Aurora read from file. Select the DB instance, the region, the key, access key, pretty generic, and once you click on test reading the file, the successful message should come, as you see on the left, the green tab that you see, that test connection successful. And after this, it all becomes as easy as monitoring a standard MySQL. All the information are able to be collected by Moniog, as you would see for any localhost MySQL server that you would monitor. It pretty basic. Across all the tabs like dashboard, servers, monitors, you would have all the metrics enabled for this particular RDS instance. And most importantly, do not forget to check the query analyzer after this, and it would be showing all the information that is required. RDS OS monitoring is something that is very powerful, because once you have this functionality, I could pretty much say that you do not have to manage multiple tools like CloudWatch or some other open source monitoring tool. Maybe you would have like 3 or 4 tools in your tool chest to cover the length and breadth of query analysis and system monitoring. Now you can say goodbye to all of them and just have one monitoring tool which does OS monitoring as well. So here you see all the monitors which are there for RDS or Aurora instance metrics. The first 4 monitors, like CPU utilization, read and write for IOPS, freeable memory would be enabled by default, but once you go to the menu, you could have the flexibility to add all the monitors that you see here. So basically you can monitor all of these alerts across different features of Moniog, like dashboard, query analysis. You could have a nice dashboard going on to see how the system is spiking per the production demands. It's very, very powerful, and it's very easy to use. The setup was as easy as I demonstrated just in the previous slide. And that brings me to the end of my part, and now I would switch over the controls to Eric to showcase you some of the great things about figuring out the queries or slow queries.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Shri. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure. So, thank you, Shri. Welcome to our webinar series number 2. Like Shri had just said before, I will not be long to present myself because this webinar is yours, mainly. My name is Eric Vanier, and since 2001, I shared a vast amount of experience working with Fortune 500 companies and help them keeping the enterprise database happy and healthy in different ways. I'm also coaching Oracle DBA developers because mainly they are the main players with the database, and they face daily some different pattern that impacted the performance of the application. So, most of the time, the 500 Fortune companies or even small and medium companies come to see me in general because their MySQL queries seems to be stuck for minutes, or it could be a certain dip in performance. It could be things that.
Eric, can you share your screen?
Whoops. A small technical problem. Sorry about that. So I was there, and I will pass to the second slide. So, like I just mentioned, a suddenly dip in performance. Things were running fine in a couple of months. Suddenly, performance slowed down. This is the pattern that comes back often when a company or even an SMB call me people. It's always the same questions. It's always the same pattern like I just mentioned. So the thing is, like Shri mentioned earlier, MariaDB tool, it's one of the best tools on the market because it doesn't ask you to install an agent and the server. And from my customers that I have, a good percentage of my customers are hosting the database from RDS, and you cannot have access to the OS level. MariaDB is perfect for that. And since years, I'm recommending that tool to my customers because this is one of the main reasons that I'm recommending, because in production, you cannot have, any kind of application that you will install. And if you go with a lot of applications, monitoring tools, they will ask you to install agent here and agent there. So in one way, you will overload your server just with agents. So with MariaDB, it's agentless, and it's the best side of MariaDB so far. I'm not, and all the other options are good too. So in this webinar, I will cover today 2 questions that come up often. The first one, we will take a look on how to analyze queries in real time. The second one, it will be on how to analyze your queries without slow query file. As Shri mentioned before, RDS, it's not so easy to get access to some files at the OS level. It's hard. You can have access, but sometimes more manually, you have to go download and etc. So let's get started. I will show you how to use the real-time and how to use the query analyzer from MariaDB that I use every single day with my customers because it saves a lot of time. Otherwise, I will have to go with MySQL console or another tool that you will have to use to get access to those files. So let's go see, and I will share my screen here. This is my real-time monitoring. And for the purpose of the webinar, I will go with MySQL, a MySQL database demo. There we go. So mainly here, live, I can see some select statements that they are coming often. One key, it's 1,000 times, 2,000 times, and etc., etc. I can see the total time that they were running or they were taking. We can filter based on our need. We can go with, let's say, I want to know if I have a union statement running. Yes, I have one. I can go here, click on it, and I will have my exactly here the detail of the statement, and it's very quick. I can remove it and come back to the normal filtering. I have different ways to filter. I will not go in each of them or dip because it's the webinar is very short, but I can go deeper and further webinars specifically for those options. So it's just to show you that how quickly we can get as a DBA information. This tool, MariaDB, two good sides of it. It's you will install it in a server, could be a Windows or a Linux box, and it will run right away in the backend. You will receive alerts through emails. If a slow query will take longer than, let's say, the standard or the default, it would be 10 seconds. But if you want to go and be more aggressive on the monitoring side, you can lower that number to 5302. Lower that you will decrease the number. Higher you will receive alerts. It depends on your need. It depends of what you want to monitor as well. So mainly the standard, it's 10 seconds, depending on the type of application that you have on the front. If it's a high website traffic and you don't want to see any spike or something like that, and you don't want to feel like your customer will feel like the application will slow down because of a query, it's taking longer for different reports and so on. So this is, it depends of your need. So lower that you will decrease the number, more alerts you will get for slow queries. You have a pro and con side on that. Basically here it's a very simple demo that I configured for the purpose of our webinar, but in the real field, your spikes or the graph will go up and down more often, but the real time gives you a very good picture of the current activities that you have in the database. I will not recommend to keep the real time too long because it is asking a lot of resources on the MySQL database level side. So it's just to debug for a certain of time. And after that, when you discover what was the issue, what kind of queries that were slowing down your application or your website or whatever on the front that you have, you identify. Now the next step, it will be to analyze the query and see if it's missing indexes, because usually 60 to 70% of the time when you have a query that impact the performance of your database, it's two things. It's because you are missing some indexes, or the query is probably not written properly. When I say properly, it's just because sometimes it's just a little thing to change to increase the performance of that query. So let's go see our query analyzer. And if you have questions, don't be shy, please share your questions. We are there to help you to answer your questions. So in the query analyzer tab or option, we have three options. We can run that query analyzer based on the slow query log, but if you have an RDS MySQL instance, it would be difficult to run this option. The general query log, it's the standard, it's like a real-time option from MariaDB, but in MySQL, and the impact and the performance, it's a little bit higher than MariaDB, because MariaDB, it's a bit different. It's based on another server. MariaDB has its own server. We recommend to install MariaDB in its own server and not in the same MySQL server, because you want to know if the database goes down, and if the server goes down, you will not get any alert. If it is installed in a separate server, MariaDB will be able to send you an alert that MySQL or your instance it's down. So general query is just to debug a certain short of time to see what is going on, again, for a specific time range, because you know that, let's say, the past 3 hours or the past hour, or it's always the same pattern, the same time. You want to know what is going on. Is it an update? Is it an insert? Is it editing the disk I/O that slows down your database impact? But an option that Sri mentioned before that I like as an Oracle, not Oracle MySQL DBA, but as a consultant DBA, I like it's the Sniffer. Why? Because I like to be independent. I like to be to use this option because I don't have to tweak anything to go get the information, and I can store independently the data or the stats or the information for a certain time back in time. So if I want to keep, let's say, all the activities every single day for 365 days, with the Sniffer option, I can do it. Instead, at the opposite, if I go with a slow query, I will have to go schedule to the cron job or scheduler to the scheduler of Windows, a script that will grab all the information globally from the slow query, and I will have to script something to filter the information that I want. It's, you know, it's more restricted. It's not as flexible as the Sniffer from MariaDB. This is the first option when I started to use MariaDB that I liked, and it was amazing for me. So Sniffer, let's go see, analyze, and by default I pre-configure it to go with all. So basically the top 5 queries based on total time, right away I can identify the top 5. If my boss asks me, or my client, customers ask me, Eric, what is going on with the past, I don't know, the past hour, the past 3 hours, what is going on with our database? Because our application is very slow, and we have checked from our side and the application with Wi-Fi, Apache, and so on, it's fine. So basically, I will go with MariaDB, and I will go with the top 5 queries in a couple of seconds. Here we can see, and just to bring up the arrow on the statement, what was the statement? A count star means maybe something. If I go here, I will get something, the statement. If I go down, it's coming up a little bit more complex statements. Here we go. This is a huge one. So if I go with this one, for example, select count star from salaries. A star means for me that this query will count all the columns, all the rows from all the columns. Not very smart, because I need usually just one column, and I will put the name of the column instead of star, or the number of the column, indexes, or with a primary key. So my count would be 2-3 times faster than just a star between parentheses. If I go with the explain, I don't have to go to the server or through another SQL tool and see what is going on with that query, because I can get the information exactly from that sniffer, that option. So actually here, it's probably MySQL is using one index. It's returning 2 million something rows. The KLAN is good. It's a short one. And so far, this one is okay, but I'm a little bit, worried about the possible case here. So something is mixing MySQL, and MySQL is not sure if it has to use this index. So we have to dig a little bit more and go get the information at this level with console, MySQL console, or through a SQL GUI. If I go back here, let's go see this one just for fun. So here it's aware between what it looks like. Oh, it's a full scan. When you see here a type all, it's a full scan. So it's using the where. The where means for me that the salary, the column salary here, it's not indexed. So it's right away, I know that you don't have any index on that column. So what I will go do is I will go execute a show create table on the table salaries, and I'm pretty sure that I will not see any indexes based on the column salary. So what I'm going to do in the next step is I will create an indexed based on the salary column, and I'm pretty sure 100% that this will become much better. The other thing is, and I'm trying to be quick because we have a short webinar. Let's see this one here, the third one. It's a tricky one because it's a or and it's 2 likes. That's really tricky. What MariaDB will tell us? It's a full scan again, and we can see that we don't have any existing indexes for that one. So I'm gonna keep my screen open here. Quickly, I will come here with the same query, and as we can see, based on MySQL console, based on an explain on the same query, that the first, it's a union query, and the indexes here, they're not filtering the information in an efficient way. So basically, I have employees, and we saw that we had a union and we're based on the first name and last name. What I'm going to do is I will create an index, because if we go and we do a show create table on employees /G, as you can see, the only kind of index, it's the primary key that I have, nothing else. So I know that when I see a filtered 11% using where, that it's missing for sure at 300% an index. Let's go see the first one. create index, let's say first name on employees, and I will go with the column name. Oops, sorry. Here we go. And I would execute again the same explain plan. See, we have an index here filtered 100%. So that means I increased at least this kind of query at least 25%. I gained 25% more performance with this one. If I do the same thing, because it's a union, see, it's a union. So I will go with the same pattern, but with the last name, because I can see that the columns that used in the last column, let's go see that. And I increased at least 50 at 70% this query. I will not go further because the third one is a little bit tricky. It's a using temporary. Usually, in general, temporary status means it's a union. It could be a join. It could be something else that it's a little bit tricky, and we have to dig a little bit further. But basically, in a couple of minutes, I was able to increase the performance of a kind of tricky statement by at least 2 times that compared than before. The last thing that I will just cover, it's usually the way that we write, just to copy and paste this. Oops, that's there we go. If I write a statement like you see through the explain level row, you will see that I have a count star. I have a group by. If I go as is, as you can see, MySQL doesn't see any indexes that it can take, and it's a full scan. I can just change a little bit this query to improve it without creating any indexes, because sometimes in production we cannot create indexes like we want. And as you can see, I just change a little bit the same thing with a group by, with the staff ID instead of the return date, and I could use the index. So this is another trick that I'm sharing with you. Sometimes it's not because we have to create an index. Some circumstances will not allow us to create an index. It's just to change the key to group by. This is an example. So I hope this was good for you guys. So I'm going back with my slides here. So you can visit, if you need further advice, you can visit my website, ericvanier.com, and it would be a pleasure to get to share with you, to give you free 30 minutes of consultation. Just drop me an email at dba@ericvanier.com, and I will contact you, and we're gonna discuss together. Monyag, you can try it, and you can have a free trial available on monyag.com. You have all the documentation. If you need some training, I can help you on that. Monyag or Shri's team too can help you, and you can contact at sales@webyag.com. And Shri, I would just share you a bit your screen. I will pass you the control.
All right, so thank you very much, Eric, for that. And now we would quickly move on to Q&A session. So I think we have got like a couple of questions here. Oops, okay, I think it's going inside, so I think we got a lot of questions. Okay, so I'm just going to take it by the order that by which we received it. So the first question is from John. Why does Monarch require 5 GB of space per server monitored? That's a great question. Okay, so Monarch fetches a lot of information, and it only saves the delta value of each variable. But if the server is busy and a small data collection interval is set in Monarch, it leads to a lot of data being generated, which is stored on the embedded SQLite repository. Also, specifically, the Sniffer and real-time sessions monitor all the queries on your MySQL server, which depends on how busy the server is. Still, this generates quite some data, and to be on a safe side, 5 GB of space per server is pretty much recommended, and you should be fine with that. Okay, the next question that I see here is from Victor. Does Monarch provide execution plan for top 10 queries for RDS instances? Oh, great, yes, and this is something that most of our customers pretty much like it, and they find a lot of value in it. You can get the queries running in your MySQL server from real-time and query analyzer feature in Monarch. For all these features, for each query, you will get the explain query option, because as I demonstrated earlier, the moment you enable file-based log monitoring, RDS instances just become as equal to the standard MySQL, so there's no changes in the functionality or no restrictions or no limitations in what you could do with monitoring of RDS or MySQL on the cloud. Okay, so there are a lot of other questions too. In the interest of the time, we would take all of them by email, and we would post all of the answers on the blog post as well. And stay tuned to our next webinar, which will allow you to achieve faster issue resolution time. It's mainly about making your team productive and yourself also productive, so that you can save a lot of time using Monarch. If you are not registered, you can go to blog page and register for the third part of the series. Every part has a different GoToWebinar ID, so please be careful to register. And I hope to talk to you guys again. And I thank you, Eric, and everybody for sticking with us for like 46-47 minutes through. And,
thank you, Shri.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. And you guys have a great day, and I look forward to speaking to you guys soon. Bye now.